I did not have going live today. Excuse me. I did not have going live today at 3 p.m. Eastern in the afternoon on my bingo card. But we have breaking news coming down the pipeline from Ross Dellinger over at Yahoo Sports. Wow. Wow. The Memphis Tigers are making a bold push to try and get into the Big 12 conference. They've been apparently trying this for months, working on this for months. Over a year, their new president, their administration has been working on trying to make this bold push in to the Big 12. It could be a $200 million boost revenue stream to the Big 12 conference. But as of right now, according to Ross Dellinger's sources, it's a no-go. We're going to talk about that in this live edition of Couz's Corner. Thank you for joining the show. I am back from vacation. Enjoyed a great week with my family at the beach. We had awesome weather. Had a really good time, but I'm back and I'm ready, back in the saddle. Decided to take a break from my normal work day to bring you this content that I saw flow across my feed. Was able to read this Ross Dellinger article and decided to bring you guys my thoughts on it. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and talk about what this means. First off, it's Ross Dellinger over Yahoo Sports, and the article says Memphis proposing lucrative offer to join Big 12, but it lacks support from conference leadership, per sources. Memphis has proposed to the Big 12 a lucrative membership proposal, a serious enough endeavor that league presidents met Monday to discuss the offer. That's today. But the proposition is not believed to have the necessary support for now. Now, I'm not going to read you this entire article by Ross Dellinger. You can go over to his X account and look at it for yourself. I'll also leave a link in the description box. But I'm going to go over the bullet points here, and then I'm going to get to the comments, see what you guys have to say about this as well. This is going to be a brief show. I have somewhere I have to be today. So it's going to be, it'll be less than an hour show. Okay. But let's go ahead and talk about this. Thank you for those of you who've tuned in already, by the way. I know it's a lot of you are probably at work, but here we are. Like I said, the Big 12 presidents have met to talk about this and apparently are seriously exploring this proposal from Memphis. And here's what the proposal says. The total over 5 years to the Big 12 with this addition could be up to $200 million. That's what sources are telling Ross Dellinger. Up to $200 million in additional money for the Big 12 conference. Okay? The big chunk of that would be from sponsorship deals. Memphis has a great relationship with companies like FedEx, companies like Lowe's, AutoZone. Those are the three companies mentioned in the article by Ross Dellinger. Those companies are willing to chip in money, sponsorship deals to the Big 12 to get Memphis into the conference. That's where majority of the revenue would come from, would be support from those three companies in the form of sponsorship deals. There would also be money coming into the Big 12 in the form of Memphis not taking any revenue. Sound familiar? SMU, ACC, they're not taking any media revenue money for several years in the ADC. Well, Memphis is proposing the same thing. They're saying, hey, we won't take any TV revenue money for the last 5 years of your TV contract with ESPN and Fox. So that's an additional, that's whatever money. So we're not taking any money. And that's believed to be an additional $50 million to the league if that were to happen. This is all proposed now. So you've got $150 million in sponsorship money to the league. No, Memphis not taking any TV revenue money. It's believed to be a total of about $200 million, which would be about $2 million per team over the next 5 years. In addition to the $1 million they're getting from PayPal with the deal they just made with PayPal. These teams, this league, all of college sports now is cash strapped. So you think when you hear this on the surface as a fan of a Big 12 team, you're thinking, man, this is a no-brainer. You get a new team in your league, you get an additional $2 million a year ballpark in money to each team to help cover the cost of the revenue sharing and all these other things. But according to Russell sources, there's no support for it, at least not right now. And as a matter of fact, here's some of the quotes. It says, one of the Big 12 leaders said, and this is all under the condition of anonymity, "We vetted Memphis when we added the other four, Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU, and chose not to add them. What's changed now?" So they're not, you've got to have 12, a supermajority, 12 of 16 teams in order for this to happen. 12 of the 16 teams would have to vote yes. Right now, they apparently don't have that. Another Big 12 leader says, "I'm not certain it has enough support." So it's crazy to me, at least on the surface. Now, I'll give you in a minute why I think the Big 12 might be saying no right now to this deal. But on the surface, my immediate reaction was, whoa, man, this is a no-brainer. Go for it. Go do this. You get in a new market in Memphis, Tennessee, a state you're not in, get you closer to the Midwest, helps you fill that gap between Cincinnati and, the Kansas schools, right? The Iowa schools, the Midwest schools. It's a geographic fit. Memphis is a very respected. I mean, look what it would do for Big 12 basketball, were Memphis to join as a basketball member, which I'm assuming they would be in this case. Memphis is a very respectable basketball program, has always has been for many, many, many years. They've played for national championships in basketball. My gosh, they just beat West Virginia yeah, I'll take it. West Virginia had an interim coach. I get that. But they still beat a Power 4 school in a bowl game. They've shown that they can compete at the highest level in the G5. So on the surface, I mean, and even for the monetary portion, you're thinking no brainer, right? But there's even more to this. This is looked at as a no risk move for the Big 12, a no risk concept. Why is that? Because not only do you have the $150 million in over 5 years in sponsorships, Memphis would subject itself to expulsion after the 2030-2031 season if the Big 12 deems it not adding value. So Memphis is going to the Big 12 and saying, hey, guys, we've got these three mega companies, FedEx, Lowe's, AutoZone, three major companies in the United States, willing to pay our way into your league and actually increase your checking account by about $150 million over 5 years, which is what, $30 million a year, right? Just doing quick West Virginia math. Oh, by the way, our team's also not going to take any immediate money because we're also willing to throw more money in for them to keep them competitive. So Memphis is making a huge commitment here. Their donors, their backers are making a huge commitment to keep Memphis competitive and get them in a power conference. That tells me something, right? That tells me they want to compete at the highest level. And they have the backing to do what it takes, just like SMU did. And they're even willing to be kicked out of the league if they're not valuable. So that makes it, to me, when I hear that, why would you say no to this deal? Why would you say no to a deal like this? Then I got to thinking, wait a minute. You can't look 5 years down the road. You have to look 10, 15, 20 years down the road if you're Brett Yormark, if you're these school presidents, right? And there are other things that come into play here. For example, what would ESPN and Fox think about this? Would ESPN and Fox, do they want Memphis in the Big 12? Do they feel like Memphis brings enough value to their programming to add them to the conference? Because if they don't, then maybe they don't want to pay pro rata to the league for this ad. Because remember, the pro rata deal, my understanding about the pro rata deal that ESPN has with the Big 12 is it must be another Power 4 school. Memphis doesn't fall into that category. So ESPN and Fox may not be willing to pay pro rata for them, which means that might actually, cut into their current TV deal a little bit. I don't know. There's a lot of things that go into play, but according to the article, though, that's not the case. It's actually bringing revenue to the schools. But we got to keep in mind that might be Memphis's side of this proposal here. We're not hearing all the details, but I would love to know what Fox and ESPN would think about this, because maybe that's the reason. And then let's not forget. I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, but it's true. Academics plays a part. I don't know anything about Memphis's academics. I don't know where they stand in academic rankings. I don't know if they're an AAU school. I don't know any of that stuff. I haven't researched any of that yet. Haven't had time yet. Just through this video, just through this live show up real quick. Would they want to bring them in there for that? What's up, Daniel Gigax? What's up, Stormy Cyclone? A couple paid VIP members here in the house. Also got Browns and Beers, another paid VIP member. But maybe, just maybe, there's an academic. Now, I know, as someone who cheers for West Virginia, maybe that sounds hypocritical, but I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just telling you, maybe there's something to that. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think the Big 12 is as concerned about that as other leagues might be. I think it's more of, what does this look like for our conference long term? How does it affect our college football playoff money long term, right? Because we all know there's been a debate about whether they want more. They don't want to be adding any more teams. The SEC and Big Ten didn't want to chip in any more money for the ACC to add SMU, for example. So there's been some debate around that. So maybe the same case here. Would the other schools be willing to pay the Big 12 additional college football playoff money for adding Memphis? Probably not. So maybe that cuts into the Big 12's college football playoff pie as well. So there's a lot of things around this that aren't necessarily talked about specifically in this article. But at the end of the day, according to Ross Dellinger's sources, it would add $200 million to the coffers for the Big 12 over a 5-year period, which is $40 million a year. What's that come out to? I'll do some real quick math because I'm not good at math. So I'm going to do it. 40 million divided by 16 teams would be about $2.5 million per team. So, and in this revenue share era, that's $2.5 million more than what you had yesterday. But, and as somebody mentioned in the comments, Memphis is on probation right now. So does that play a role, right? Does that play a role in this discussion? That came from Stormy Cyclone. He says they're also on probation as of last week. See, I didn't even know that. Of course, I was sitting on the beach last week, so I probably missed it somehow. But thank you for that comment, Stormy Cyclone. That might play a role in it. We've got Tar Heel in the house who's always commenting on my realignment content. He says Memphis needs an amicable Tier 2 realignment after this Tier 1 realignment is complete. We've got Daniel Gigax in the house. He says, I remember in 2022 that Memphis was on the short list for the Big 12. They were passed over for Houston. Yep, that's exactly what some of the other confidential Big 12 sources are telling Ross Dellinger. We didn't want to add them in 2022. Why would we want to add them now? What's changed? Well, it seems to me, and look, if has financial support increased since 2022, that's something I would be interested in hearing, right? Maybe that's changed. I don't know. Maybe they didn't have this same level of financial support in 22 that they have today. But that's something all these Big 12 presidents probably would know. So when they went into that meeting, they would have the answers to those questions, at least to the best of their ability today. Let me go up here to see this comment from Browns and Beers. He says, should have made this pitch when the Big 12 took in UCF, Houston, BYU, and Cincinnati. And apparently they did, Browns and Beers, but probably not this aggressively. Some of these schools, what SMU has done is kind of set a precedent here. And the article even mentions it. They've set a precedent on free memberships here, paying your way into conferences, basically. But not only that, they would have to buy their way out of the American. There's like a $25 million buyout out of the American. They'd have to turn around and buy their way into the Big 12. I mean, we're talking, the amount of money it would take to make this work is astronomical. But these big companies are willing to pay the freight. And it's phenomenal. There's got to be something here that we're missing that's not being talked about in this article. Why would the Big, and hopefully this will come out in another article, but why would Big 12 leaders, the presidents of these Big 12 universities, say no to a deal like this? That's my question. That's my question. Why would you say no to a deal that's going to bring each of your schools, or your school individually, if you're a college president, it's going to bring your school an additional 2.5 million a year, ballpark. That's not easy money to go out and find. But long term, maybe they feel like it'll hurt their conference. But here's to me is what makes this. And what you want my opinion on this? I think they should do it. And here's why. I think you need more schools closer to the eastern part of the country. I know Memphis isn't really east. Memphis is in the western part of Tennessee, not really that close. So it doesn't really help West Virginia that much. So maybe that's a moot point. But nonetheless, it still helps you fill that gap a little bit, like I mentioned earlier. But man, financially, it just makes too much sense. If you don't have to pay them anything and you can kick them out after the 2030, 2031 season, why do you say no to that? But here's another thing that us normal folk don't understand. We've heard Brett Yormark talk multiple times about how hard it is to incorporate teams into the league. And they've had to do that 2 years in a row. They had to incorporate Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and BYU 2 years ago. And then last year, they had to add four corner schools to the league. And Brett Yormark talked about how those were tough. That was tough to do. There was a lot of work that went into that. So maybe you don't want to go through the trouble of bringing a team in and then having to kick them out in 5 years after adding them in. Maybe there's a lot of work to that. Maybe it's not something your TV partners are interested in. They want to know who's in your league long term. Or maybe the Big 12 doesn't know what's going to be out there. Maybe they still are holding out hope that there'll be some ACC teams available for them to get that would be even more lucrative to their league. That's what I'm thinking, that the Big 12 is at a point right now. They're sitting there going, all right, wait a minute. We need to calm down. We're dealing with the House settlement, all the lawsuits that are coming from that. We've got President Trump looking at a executive order. We've got Congress trying to pass bills that might help the landscape of college sports. We've got we've got the college football playoff expansion talks, all of these things going on in college sports. Maybe they're like, you know what? We don't need to add this to our plate right now. We don't need this headache. We don't need this additional uncertainty when we already have all this uncertainty for our future, not just for the Big 12, but for everybody right now. And there's also the talks out there about a potential super league that could form between potential ACC schools and Big 12 schools. We've got ACC schools that are looking to potentially form a new conference. I mean, there's all of these unknowns out there right now. And the Big 12 may be not wanting to jump the gun here and do something quick and make a decision that might hinder them down the road. For example, had they known the four corner schools were going to be available 3 years ago, would they have made the decision to add UCF, BYU, Houston, and Cincinnati? I'm not sure they would have. Maybe they add one or two of those schools, but do they add all four of them? I doubt it. But they didn't know the four corner schools were going to become available. They didn't know the Pac-12 was going to make terrible decisions and not accept the TV deal that was laid before them. They didn't know any of that was going to happen. They couldn't predict the future. So maybe knowing that history, knowing that and what happened and how things can happen in college sports. Yeah, that's right. Hit that thumbs up button, baby. Apple knows it. Apple reads the room. But anyway, maybe knowing what they know now, I guess would be the best way to put it. Maybe they don't want to jump the gun, make a rash decision. But here's the problem. Memphis is going to try to go to another conference if they don't join your conference. Maybe they go talk to the Pac-12. The Pac-12's talked to them. But the Pac-12 is not an autonomous conference. So maybe they don't want to join the Pac-12. Maybe they try to make a deal with the Big East. Ross mentioned that in the article. Maybe they look at adding their basketball school to the Big East, just in basketball. There are so many things that could come that Memphis could do now, or so many options potentially. But I think there's a lot of this. I think there's so much uncertainty in college sports that a lot of these schools and a lot of these conferences don't want to do any expansion right now. They just don't want to deal with it unless it's a surefire thing, like adding Notre Dame, or the SEC feels like SEC and Big Ten both feel like adding UNC apparently is a no-brainer. All these things, unless it's a no-brainer move, maybe you don't make it. I don't know. But to me, it would be hard to turn this down knowing you get that shot in the arm of an additional $2.5 million a year for each of your teams. But again, these commissioners and these presidents are thinking long-term, not short-term. They're thinking 10, 20 years down the road. And since nobody knows what college sports is going to look like 10, 20 years down the road, maybe they don't think it's the right time to act on this. Barron O'Beef Dip says, hey, Couz, good to see you, listening to you and mowing the yard. Let's go Mountaineers. We got CFB Plus in the house. They had to add those 4 schools at that time, CFB Plus. But, again, had they known the 4 corner schools would become available, well, yeah, they kind of did because they were down to 6 teams. That's fair. Or 8, I'm sorry, I guess they were down to 8. They would have been down to 8 teams. But they could have kept their power conference status at 8 teams. Well, potentially. I don't know. They might have lost it. There was so much of that. There's so much unknowns to that too, CFB Plus. Would they lost their autonomy conference status had they not added those 4? We don't know. Tar Heel says, adding teams at a heavy discount can finance unequal distributions. See Cal +2. But I don't think the Big 12 is a conference that wants to do unequal distributions, Tar Heel. I just don't think there's enough brands in the league there's so much brand equity in the Big 12, in my opinion. I'm not sure that unequal revenue sharing is even a conversation. Maybe it is behind closed doors, but I don't really think it makes sense for the Big 12. Terry Fox says Memphis is a bridge to the Western schools, potentially. That's a great way of putting it. I said it kind of fills the gap. A bridge would be the best way to put it. He says Memphis fans hate the American. Mike 55 says college football is confusing, but it usually comes down to money, and you're absolutely right. Stormy Cyclone, a VIP member, says they do have their own bowl in town, maybe a cut of the Liberty Bowl. There's another option. You know, maybe you assure the Big 12 a spot in the Liberty Bowl long term and a cut of that money. There's a lot of other things. And, you know, maybe the Big 12 leaked this out there to strengthen their bargaining, you know, uses leverage, or it could be the opposite. Maybe Memphis felt like it was good for them to leak it out there. Who knows? But based on what Ross was saying in his article, it sounds like it was Big 12 leaders who leaked this. So under the condition of anonymity. So always makes you wonder why they leaked it. Maybe they're trying to draw the attention of other schools. Who knows? There's a lot of reasons that could happen. Tar Heel says he agrees that the Big 12 would have problems with implementing unequals. Was just a thought. Yep, absolutely. Son of Skitter 9917 in the house says if Memphis was worth adding, they wouldn't be throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at us. Has-Been has joined the chat. Has-Been says, is the $150 million sponsorship pledge from the 3 companies direct payments to the league or through media advertising on conference games? It's my understanding, the way I read the article, Has-Been, and again, you can read it for yourself. It's over on Twitter on Ross Dellinger's account, that it's sponsorship deals. They're not just doing it for nothing. These companies want sponsorship deals with the Big 12. Daniel Gigax says he's thinking Memphis leaked it just for the AAC media days. Yeah, that's fair. That's very possible. But Ross did reach out to his Big 12 sources if that's the case. Some of them confirmed it, I guess. But you're probably right. It probably originally came from Memphis. I really, this is, like, I've done videos in the past talking about whether or not Memphis was a fit in the Big 12. I think they are to a degree, but at the same time, I see a lot of downside. Again, long term, are they a good fit? Are they these moves they're making? Are they short term moves? Are they long term moves? As far as their commitment to sports and football, according to the article too, they've committed to meeting the $20.5 million revenue share max within the next year. So that's on the table as well. That's something that's got to be looked at. And maybe the Big 12 was also sitting back and waiting and going, you know what? Let's see if Memphis does what they're saying they're going to do. Let's see if Memphis goes full revenue share. Let's see if they do all these things, because if they don't, then maybe that, maybe they're in kind of a wait and see mode, because there's been a lot. We've heard controversy over the years, and I don't know all the details behind it, but there's been a lot of controversy around Memphis' stadium, the Liberty Bowl, right? The upgrades that are needed there, and whether those, there's been some leadership issues at Memphis over the last several. There have been some leadership issues at Memphis, and maybe they're wanting to make sure those are behind them. And again, I saw somebody in the chat mention earlier that that they're on probation, so that might be a red flag as well. There are a lot of things that are potentially red flags for Memphis, and maybe the Big 12 just doesn't want to jump into a commitment there without some certainty, and without seeing what else is going to happen around college sports, around these other leagues, namely the ACC. Philip Anderson says, I see it now, but we beat WVU. Rebuild of the Liberty Bowl that is ongoing, Daniel. Absolutely. There is a live camera at the stadium. Cool. To watch the rebuild. But there are some good news that leaked today as well. Here in the second half of the show, I want to talk about some good news that could be positive, or some news that is leaked that could be positive for West Virginia. And we're going to talk about that in the second half of the show. Before we get there, though, I do want to talk about the sponsor of the channel here, Appalachia Digital. Fine folks over at Appalachia Digital. They're your home. If you need a new website, or if you need to upgrade your current website, or if you need to, increase your SEO, get found easier on Google, any of that stuff, Appalachia Digital is the folks you need to talk to. Go to AppalachiaDigital.com, and it's Appalachia, no N on the end, AppalachiaDigital.com/Couz. That lets them know that I sent you. And you can talk to them about building you a new site, rebuilding your current site, helping you with SEO, all that. They can do any of that. Reach out to them today. They are the folks who designed the website over at wvsportschat.com. They did a great job for us. I think they can do the same for you, so go check them out. And I want to give them a shout out here as we go into the second half of the show. Before we do that, though, I want to share this comment by Browns and Beers, because this is a great point. I will say that, at least in terms of enrollment, Memphis is highly behind Houston, Cincy, and UCF. With that, the conference may feel like they don't have potential to grow their fan base. And that is a great point, because enrollment is a big deal for colleges right now. There's not enough people talking about this. Greg Flugar talks about it. I'm sure there are some other channels, but not enough people are talking about this. I hear it talked about in the business world quite a bit. But not only with college age student enrollment, but also the working class demographic age group. There's going to be less of those people moving forward, because families are having less children, right? So enrollment is a big deal. Is enrollment growing? That's one of the reasons North Carolina is such an attractive school. Yes, they have an attractive brand, but it's not all about brand with them. It's about North Carolina, one of the fastest growing states in the country. They're one of the only states that aren't losing students. They're not seeing a decline in college student enrollment. What's the trajectory long term about Memphis's enrollment? Does it look good? Does it not look good? Those are things that the college presidents look at things. But as sports fans, all we care about is the sports aspect of this, folks. College presidents oversee an entire university. So when they look at this, they're looking at it from a 30,000 foot, or at least a 10,000 foot view from the university perspective. What will this do for us as a university to be aligned with this school? Will it help us out in some way academically? Will it somehow add to our coffers financially? Will it bring more eyeballs to our league and to our school? Will it help us get more students? No. Will adding Memphis help, for an example, will adding Memphis help West Virginia get more students? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. But those are the things they have to look at. That's why I love this comment from Browns and Beers, a very loyal VIP member here on the channel. Thank you, Browns and Beers, for that comment. And thank you for your continued support of the channel. We got Big Dan T in the house. He says there are other schools that should be considered before them, but despite their rough city, they do have a good program. Absolutely. Carla Jenkins is in the house. Matthew Goldsmith, thank you for joining. Tony Cyclone says we will know around 2 years before the Big 12 media deal is up to see if this happens. Yep, great point. Big 12's talked to UConn. They've talked to Gonzaga. Those didn't come to fruition. Looks like Memphis may not either, at least not now. But this is a much more aggressive proposal that Memphis is forward than any of the other schools did in the past, especially from a financial perspective and a no-risk perspective. Again, this is considered a no-risk proposal from Memphis because they're saying, hey, if we don't add value to your league, you can kick us out in 5 years. And oh, by the way, during that 5 years, we're not taking any revenue from you. And oh, by the way, Lowe's, FedEx, and AutoZone will do sponsorship deals with your league. All of that is part of the conversation here today. Now let's switch gears a minute and talk about West Virginia and some news that came out today, or actually right as I was preparing for this show, I saw this come across my timeline. Going to go ahead and do a screen share. And we're going to pull up a tweet from Darren Heitner, who's an attorney. Does a lot on college sports news, but here's a tweet he put out. It says, a Nevada federal judge has granted a preliminary injunction to JUCO transfer Cortez Bram. Now, if that name sounds familiar to West Virginia fans, it's because he played at West Virginia in 2023 and the first 3 games of 2024 before transferring out of the program. But it says, regarding the NCAA's 5-year eligibility rule, this is a major win for athletes amid recent NCAA victories against Jagger Giles and on appeal against Nazir Forquarian. I can't pronounce his name, but nonetheless, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but West Virginia right now has 4 football players. And all 4 of them could be starters potentially. And I know at least one is a potential All-American candidate, or at least All Big 12 candidate. That's Jamoy Robinson, the defensive end from UTSA. They are all facing eligibility questions because of the number of years they've been in college, around the JUCO rules, and it's convoluted. There's a lot to it, but they have not been ruled eligible yet. They're having to get waivers from the NCAA. They have not gotten them yet. They did not even appear on their Big 12 media roster that was given out for Big 12 media days. But it's my understanding that this ruling by this Nevada judge may open the door for them to be eligible. I don't know that for 100% certainty, but it definitely should help in their argument, because now this federal judge is saying, hey, the 5-year eligibility rule, can't lock into that right now, because that is, and Heitner goes on to talk about how he says the court agrees with Braham that the relevant market is NCAA D1 college football, as it is the sole pathway to NFL opportunities, and participation provides unique benefits, including NIL compensation, which are not available elsewhere, including at the JUCO level. And he says this is key. The court agreed that the NCAA's attempt to cast its eligibility rules as, quote, non-commercial is misguided and outdated in a post-Austin world. This has become the threshold issue on eligibility cases, and there's a clear split among federal judges. So it sounds like they're basically saying we can't restrict players to 5 years of eligibility if they play JUCO ball, because those JUCO years don't count. They shouldn't count, because those JUCO years don't help them get to the NFL, and they're not allowed to earn NIL money as in JUCO, or they can't earn NIL money in JUCO. Not saying they can't or not allowed to, but they can't. So this ruling should help. If I understand everything correctly, this should open the door for Jamoy Robinson, safety Justin Harrington, the transfer from Washington, who used to play at Oklahoma, for Jeff Weimer, the receiver from Idaho, and for Ty Edwards, the running back transfer from Northern Iowa, who's could be a stud in his own right. It could open the door for those 4 players to be eligible for West Virginia. And if it does, it actually, I'll be honest with you, it could be the difference in them winning a game or two this year and not winning it. I think those 4 players, are, especially Jamoy Robinson, is that important to this football program, to this football team. So that's a very important ruling. Again, go to Darren Heitner, at Darren Heitner. It's at DARREN Heitner, HEITNER on X. He talks about it on his he's an attorney. Talks about it over on his Twitter account. So that's some good news that has came out today for us West Virginia fans that I thought I might want to bring to you guys. And heck, if you like Wet Blanket, for example, I know you're not a West Virginia fan, but this could impact your team as well. There are probably at least 1 or 2 players on every team that this can impact. But I know as a West Virginia fan, we had 4 players, including one big one in Jamoy Robinson, that we were really, really, really hoping would become eligible because the coaching staff is really high on them. Phil Steele has Jamoy Robinson as a first-team All-Big 12 performer. We've seen Ty Edwards appear in a lot of preseason rankings lists. They're listing him as a fullback, but he's a big C.J. Donaldson type, big-bodied back that West Virginia could use as a change of pace guy. So these are very important rulings here that are coming down that could benefit. And it's funny, almost every ruling like this has some kind of West Virginia connection to it. The Austin case was Sean Austin, a former West Virginia running back. Last year or 2 years ago with basketball, we had, West Virginia suing on the behalf and other states suing on the behalf of Raekwon Battle and other players in basketball. Now it's Cortez Braham, a former JUCO player who, oh, by the way, happened to play a year and a quarter of his career at West Virginia. So all over the place, these rulings have West Virginia all over them. Browns and Beer says good for WVU in the short term, but what are the implications in the long term? And that's a great point, Browns and Beers, because we saw what happened with the whole Raekwon Battle thing. A, it didn't help the team that much because they still had a terrible season. And B, it impacted them negatively on the football team because they had football players that were able to instantly transfer that West Virginia was relying on for that next season. So, yes, it helps them short term, but it can have long-term implications as well. So, great point. These rules might look good on the surface. It might be a shot in the arm for your program or your team because of maybe one specific player. But again, these things are not in a vacuum. These are long-term decisions that have long-term impacts. It'll be interesting to see if this goes to the Supreme Court or to a higher court, what ruling ends up happening, or if the NCAA ends up, changing some kind of rule around this. It'll be interesting to see what happens from that. A lot of it could just determine, what federal government does as far as laws and rules. Do they codify the House settlement? All these things. There's so much going on in college sports right now with all these various cases and settlements and changes that, who's to say what this looks like in, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Jersey Ears in the house. He says, of course, I recorded a video already that hasn't dropped yet. And then this news came out. I had recorded one too, Jersey Ear. That's why I decided to do this one live, because I don't have time to edit 2 videos today. So I've already recorded one, haven't edited it yet. I'll probably end up bringing it out tomorrow now. Just as a hint, it's about West Virginia basketball specifically. But I'll probably put it up tomorrow on here on Couz's Corner and over on the Hoops from the Hills channel as well. So be on the lookout for that. But thank you for joining the chat, Jersey Ear. I warned you guys that this would be a short show. I'm going to have to jump off here. I have somewhere I have to be at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And right now it is 3:40. So I'm going to call it a show. I do appreciate everybody jumping on here. This kind of impromptu emergency live stream. Thank you so much for support. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button on your way out if you haven't yet. If you're watching this on the replay, thanks for watching. The thumbs up button helps there as well. Comments help. The YouTube algorithm loves that kind of stuff. It lets them know you're interested in my content, and they will hopefully push it out to more people. And also, just share it with your family and friends. Let them know about Couz's Corner, that I'm here covering West Virginia Mountaineers and anything that affects the Big 12 in college sports. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you. God bless, and Q Country Roads.